So guys, in my last video, I kind of started off with something a little bit more lighthearted, and I think I'm going to do it the same way today, because one kind of funny side effect of this whole outbreak around the world is that you had all kinds of weird butterfly effect things happening, right, that you didn't really consider. But I thought I'd share some of you. I mean, you might have seen it, kind of went around already. But here we have Kenneth Copeland healing people, healing viewers from through the television. Oh.
Yes, Lord. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Lord Jesus. He received your healing
Yes.
now. Say it, I
Oh,
take
God.
it.
I take it.
I have it.
I have it.
It's mine.
It's mine.
I thank you and praise you for it.
Yes, Lord.
And
What's wrong with his fingers? Are they wet? Is it like holy water or something? Or does he have like a gel-like substance covering the tips of his fingers?
I forgive if I have aught against any.
I forgive.
And I praise you that I'm well and whole.
I praise you.
Right, so it goes
According
on
to
and
the-
on. Everyone who watched it is lucky, obviously, because they got just cured from the disease, because this obviously works. And it seems like, looking at the measures that are being taken, I mean, in the UK it's ridiculous, but the measures being taken in the US are not that far from what you see here in this video, it feels like. I'm not sure even if this is like a government signed off part of the healthcare system type thing. Who knows? But I thought I'll share that with you. Another thing I saw was these monkeys, right? Hundreds of hungry monkeys swarm across the Thai street as rival gangs fight over food after tourists who normally feed them stay away because of what's going on. And check those monkeys out. They're desperate, man. They're like, look, it's a piece of bread. Did you hear? He's got a piece of bread. And then they just kill each other over the piece of bread. I don't know. This is, I mean, take all this with a grain of salt. I have no idea. I didn't trace this back where it really originates from. I mean, it is the Daily Mail online, so I guess it's a little bit trustworthy. But, you know, who doesn't tell me it's like a 2-year-old recording from not even Thailand? Who knows? But it's a funny idea. And I find it like interesting and a little bit concerning at the same time that all these things are happening that we really can't predict. You know, it is that much out of control at this point that a lot of little butterfly effect type things will happen that we didn't really see coming, and that just being one of them. I mean, this one is a funny one, but I'm sure there will be others that are not so funny. Apes together strong. Good. I like that one. So we're moving on. The next interesting point that I found, it's another obscure side effect, and we saw that in China already. Probably you can still see it now, but it basically shows that the air pollution that usually is kind of at normal levels, I guess, in Italy, to be honest, I had no idea. Look at this dark red spot here in Italy, while pretty much nowhere else you have that much pollution. I don't know if they just highlighted it for the sake of this video, but yeah, it looks like in the north of Italy. I mean, I know that in the north of Italy there's a lot of industry, but I didn't know that it contrasts that much with the rest of Europe. But what happens is you can see during the lockdown and during the measures being taken that the pollution that is on other days normal drastically reduces. Already in a few days, you're really going from that very bright red being normal to something that looks more like in other areas. So the pollution is visibly going down. We could witness the same effect in China when they kind of went through the top of their lockdown. And I mean, that's interesting. Obviously, a lot of people died. It is a horrible thing that's happening. But again, I mentioned it in my first video. Maybe somewhere deep in here is also a chance that makes us kind of reflect on what's going on, what might be going wrong. Because now everything has been grinded to a halt unintentionally. You know, nobody wants it to stop, but we are forced to stop. And maybe, you know, sometimes when someone's running too fast, it's good to stop them and to just make them think. I'm not sure, you know, I don't have that much trust in our politicians, no matter in what country really. But, you know, there's a little bit of hope in there that after we somehow make it through this, there will be a new way of reflecting on things like the video we've just saw on transport routes, on dependency on China, on manufacturing in your own country and being self-sufficient to an extent. And all these kind of questions, I think they will come up, and that's not a bad thing. So that is interesting. What we've seen as well moving forward is that a lot of celebrities and famous people in the wider sense have been testing positive. I mentioned it already, but the UK Health Minister Nadine Dorries has been tested positive and has been also around in the parliament and in touch with several members of the parliament. So we're now getting very similar reports from around the world. So first of all, the big story, I guess, is that Trump has been in contact with quite a few people quite closely that apparently have now been diagnosed with the disease. So you can see here, the guy behind Trump tested positive. So that's that guy. And then the next reply is that here's another picture of him holding a gift from him. So, I mean, just looking at a picture like that, I mean, you just can't deny the irony and just severity of what's going on right now, how it is kind of subtly expressed in a picture like this, if you just know the backstory. So, of course, we don't know if Donald Trump has been infected. Probably we won't know because it has been announced that President Trump will not be tested after coming in contact with a Brazilian official who tested positive. I don't know if this official is exactly that guy. I'm not sure. But I've seen a few tweets like this where people are like, oh, this guy, for a week ago, he was next to it. Now he's been tested. So I don't know if we're going to see Trump or Pence coming down. I mean, here the comment is from the White House. Both the president and vice president had almost no interaction with the individual who tested positive. So if we can believe that, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure they're going to do all they can to protect their president from this. But who knows? It might already be too late. So that's that. Then we have much more. It goes into the same direction. I'm sure you heard it that Tom Hanks and his wife have been tested positive. Members of the NBA have been tested positive. And as a result, the whole NBA was suspended indefinitely at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, actually, in fact, his wife has been tested positive. So now he's in isolation. Presumably, I mean, it's his wife. He probably would be also infected. I mean, it might be lucky and kind of jumped the gun there, but presumably he will be coming down with this as well. So the fact that this is already spreading like amongst celebrities and politicians, I mean, it just shows how off the numbers of those confirmed cases we see every day are. Like, by no means are we even close to the real numbers. I mean, as you know, it is difficult to get to people like Trump or Justin Trudeau or even Tom Hanks, whatever. But I mean, obviously, it's tricky for those people because wherever they go, everybody wants a piece of them, right? Everybody wants to shake Tom Hanks' hand for a second or like just take a selfie with him or whatever. So the nature of people who are kind of in the public eye is that they have a lot of contact with a lot of people as soon as they go outside. So I do see that point. But nonetheless, I feel we really have to say that like the numbers that are actually out there right now are way, way, way higher. I believe Boris Johnson himself said that it could be as much as 10,000 people right now in the UK. My personal feeling is that we have exceeded that number. But I mean, I'm not a health professional. That's literally just my feeling. So don't give 2 cents on that, really. Most countries, meanwhile, kind of have come to their senses because measures are being taken. Most schools are closed. Across Europe at least, people are taking measures, restricting travels, suspending sports events, mass gatherings, all that. And in the UK, we don't have any of that. And it leaves me speechless. I mean, everyone I've seen talking about it, on Twitter and anywhere on the internet really is just not understanding it really, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Excuses are being found, and it's being said that, for example, closing the schools would do more damage than it would help. And I get that. For example, you don't want to have all the nurses and doctors at home because they got to watch their children, right? You want to have them in the hospital on the front, on the war zone that's about to break out in this country. But that doesn't mean that all children have to go to school. Do you know what I mean? I mean, be a little bit flexible. Maybe there's a scenario where literally all the children of parents who are, involved in this war against this disease can go to the schools, and they do get some kind of, but it's basically like a daycare center where, someone looks after the children. It's an emergency measure. You know what I mean? You bring your children there if you are a nurse or a doctor or someone who's desperately needed. But you don't need to have all children in schools. It just absolutely makes no sense. And I'm just shocked that there's not even any scalability to this from the UK government's point of view. So it's absolutely shocking. And you can see it underneath here. We're getting these kind of, I'm going to call it a conspiracy theory, but it is I mean, Boris Johnson wants as many people as possible to get sick at once, so the NHS can't cope, and he can say, see, the NHS doesn't work, we must privatize. I mentioned that before. It is kind of a theory that's going on, where people just wait for him once this cools down, and we have way less infections. He's like, oh, look how we struggled, and now we need to privatize the NHS, using this as an excuse. And now that's why he's intentionally amplifying it, and that's why we see no reaction from the UK, because he wants to amplify the first initial wave. He's doing a great job at that, if that's his plan. I don't know. Again, this is speculation. This is random people on Twitter saying it. I've seen it a lot. But then again, you see conspiracy theories a lot. But let me tell you, if he steps up in 5 months and says we need to privatize the NHS, I mean, if then not the whole world points at that picture, I mean, I don't know what's going on. It's painting a very, very sad picture. I've even read now on Twitter that some people go out on the street and intentionally infect themselves. Like, they try to get infected because they want to be in the first wave, right? They want to be in the hospital when there are still maybe a few beds and maybe at least a shared breathing machine with someone else or whatever. You don't want to be in that massive peak wave. Like, we've seen these reports and heard those reports from Italy, from China, and literally everywhere, where it just is, everything is literally out of control in terms of healthcare. It is completely out of control. So I've read this. Some people apparently risk to get infected intentionally. Don't know if it's true. It was just a tweet, but it does make sense, because if I would have to go to work and I have no option but exposing myself to this, because it is out there right now and it is severe and it is widely spread, then I don't know if I would not also try to get it now, get it over with and get it done. If you need a hospital bed, if you're lucky, you still might get one. But the big question remains is, how do we move forward, right? Like, where can we go from here? And Boris has now announced that we're now moving into the delay phase, or the contaminate phase, or they give them all fancy names. But it is literally just hot air. There's nothing coming out on the other end. Just read the number here. I think it said down here 798 1 hour ago. So we're close to 800 cases in the UK now. It is not gonna slow down. If you look at the graph, just really quick, that is posted under this message every day, kindly, from Pengwu. Look how many likes he gets for doing this. It's absolutely back on track with the trajectory we spoke about in the previous video. This little dip here happened because they did less testing. So we're absolutely back on track. Nothing has slowed down. We can't see any dip. We're definitely still going for the brutal peak of this. I'm not even sure we're close to the peak, to be honest. So how do we move forward, right? What can we do now that we are already in this situation? The outbreak cannot be stopped, okay? It basically means there will be a lockdown in the UK. Schools will be closed eventually. It might happen next week. It might happen the week after. We don't know, but they will be closed. And I think we just have to start preparing for that, really. We have to prepare for the lockdown in the UK. We have to, like I said, maybe prepare places for when it really hits, that some people might still be able to go to the jobs that they need to do in hospitals and stuff, so we can look after their kids, because this will be a problem during the lockdown. Not all doctors can be at home during a lockdown. It's a very difficult challenge that's coming our way, and at this point it just cannot be stopped anymore. And I think we just have to face it. So I think we also need to focus on things like secured food supply for everyone in the UK during the lockdown, right? How are we going to manage this? How do we ensure that we have no issues with electricity supply, clean water supply, strengthen the internet structures, make sure that people have the basic needs covered and that they don't collapse in certain areas in the middle of the lockdown when we really have other problems to deal with. Make sure the basic stuff is running. And I think what we can do a little bit is look at China for that. In the meantime, China has announced that they have passed the peak in their country. And to be honest, you got to take that with a grain of salt as well. We're talking about China here. They are the master manipulators when it comes to news and media. And we can see it now from the death rates in Italy and the outbreak there, that it does seem like China played down the numbers quite a bit, or maybe they just didn't have the right numbers or whatever it is. But when China says we are over the peak, we passed the peak, then I say, let's wait a few months and see if you've passed the peak and what the World Health Organization says to that and all that. But nonetheless, when they were in this current point of the breakout timeline, so to say, where the UK is right now with those cases, and it became very clear that like a big outbreak could not be avoided anymore, China actually reacted pretty well, right? And you got to give them credit for that. They immediately advised pretty much everyone to stay at home, accepting an enormous damage to the economy that will destroy businesses and ruin many people's financial background or money that they have. But they accepted that in the interest of the people's safety. Many people in China live in blocks of apartments, right? So you live in one block and there's nearly like a wall around it quite often, literally a physical wall with like an entrance gate. It's a bit like a gated community, not as hard as you see it like in South Africa and stuff, but it is similar. You live in one of those blocks and those blocks were just locked off and 24-hour protected by security. As far as I'm aware, pretty much everywhere, okay? They just shut it down. At the entrance is a cop, and he takes care that nobody goes in and out that doesn't have permission. Every day, one person from each house can leave and get food. It is absolutely mandatory to wear masks. It's actually, in fact, enforced by law in certain regions. So if you refuse to wear a mask in public, you'll be prosecuted. And keep in mind, the main benefit of masks is not that you don't get germs into your mouth, but it is to keep your germs in. So if you're infected and you're in the 7 to 15 day incubation time, you won't infect everyone else necessarily, or maybe you will infect less, right? Because you're wearing a mask. So you keep the germs in. And that's not a bad thing. And I think that should be happening here. Problem is there are no masks available, right? Because we're absolutely not prepared. I don't even want to know how the situation right now in NHS hospitals is in regards to masks and to hand sanitizer and stuff like that. I don't want to know. Again, I don't know. They might be great. They might be stacked up for the next 15 years with that stuff. But I have my doubts. But I think, if you ask me, I think most people want to act responsibly. But the framework of the politics at the moment, in England at least, doesn't allow you to act responsibly. Do you know what I mean? You can't act because you have to go to work. You're told to just keep going as if everything is normal. That is not responsible behavior in a situation like that, but you don't really have a choice. That's just how it works. So it's a very tricky situation, very difficult for most people to deal with, and another huge problem in all this, up to this point still, is that we're being held so short on information. Okay, for example, like everyone throws the term around pre-existing conditions, right? It's difficult. If you have pre-existing conditions, you got to be careful because you might. But what is it? What exactly classifies as a pre-existing condition, and how does it scale in the rate of death? Is it like asthma? What if I have low blood pressure? What if I'm a smoker? What if I had cancer 2 years ago? Like, you know, what category of risk does that put me in? We have so many deaths now that we should be able at least to accumulate like early statistics about risk levels that break it down in a little bit more of a compelling way so you can make an informed decision and say, no, I'm keeping my child at home because asthma was like the main underlying conditions in all those diseases. My child has heavy asthma. It will stay at home, for example. But we don't know because we're not being provided with that information. For some reason, it's being held back. For some reason, it's not being shared in that much detail. Maybe we don't have it. I have no idea. But it basically, for me at least, it means I'm not well enough informed to take the risk of this. But like we have like I said it before, we have a 2-month-old baby in our flat. There are not many cases and not many scenarios of like kids under 6 months and how well it works. Our neighbors are in higher age. I feel responsible to them as well. So I did what I can, and I am with my family in self-quarantine now, voluntary self-quarantine since 2 days. And I think mainly we're doing this to kind of wait after the first wave hit, if that makes sense. We're blessed enough that we're working from home. I did take the drastic step and wrote to the head teacher of my school, of my son's school, of my school, and asked for him to be not in school for a while. I still haven't heard back from them. I don't know what decision they're going to make. It's possible that they're going to literally discharge him from the register, so then I will need to apply for a new school position. So it's a very drastic step, and it really was one of the hardest decision that I had to make in my life. to write that letter to the head teacher. But it's funny, like the school that my son goes to, they already sent on the day when the second Cobra meeting was happening, like I think it was yesterday, they already sent like an email out that said, hey, assuming that you're soon all gonna be at home with your kids, here is some stuff you can do with your children. And, you know, attaching a bit of like work that you can do with your kids at home so they don't miss out on the education. And then Boris announces, oh, the schools stay open. So it kind of already tells, a story about the different viewpoints, I think, between the schools as well, between, the Department of Health and Education and the parents. I haven't even looked what's going on with the petition. Petition, close the schools. Is that still going or is that done? We are at nearly 500,000 signatures at this point. We will probably be by tomorrow morning, and it is being ignored. I mean, don't get me wrong, schools will close. Obviously, schools in the UK will close, but I think maybe in end of next week. My son's school, they had a trip to the library planned on Wednesday. So I mean, it's like, how can you send a group of children with teachers into a library now where there are a lot of people and a lot of books? Books are not cleaned, people don't clean books, so people touch them, people put them back on the shelf. It's not a place you want to be during a pandemic. Do you know what I mean? So I'm happy I took the step to take my son out of school. Maybe I've overreacted and maybe I'll regret it in half a year or in a year or whatever, but I did what I had to do, basically. That's what happened, and I did it. And let's see how it goes. I'll keep you guys updated on that as well, where that story is going. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video as much as you can enjoy dire, sad news like this. I genuinely hope that all of you guys out there have like an opportunity and have the chance to keep yourself safe. Look, everyone agrees that 70 or 80% of the population of the world will be infected with this disease. So we're probably all going to get it sooner or later. But I hope that you guys at least have the chance to be a little bit in control of when you're going to be hit with it, and that you're not forced to travel public transport in London every day right now, because I would not be comfortable with that. I absolutely would not be. So that's that, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. That was the video for today. Leave a like if you did. Smash that like button hard. Tell your friends about the video. And I'll probably do another one soon. Whenever I see something. I'll have a document, write stuff into it. And if there's enough stuff in the document, I'll share it with you guys. So be safe, be healthy, please, and take care. I'll see you guys. Bye.